In Jesus' name, amen.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so I'm going to say hi to the camera, and then we'll get started. Hi, everyone. My name is David Snead. I'm a missionary in Lviv, Ukraine, and this is my friend Anatoliy Sapsay. We sometimes call him Tolik. How you doing, Tolik?
And thank you.
That's good to hear. Tolik is he is a fellow minister of the gospel here in Lviv. He is a pastor, one of the pastors of a local church here that is actually like the mother church of our mother church. So,
Grandmother.
yes, the grandmother church. Praise the Lord. And he's also very involved in leadership training in Lviv. We actually, I think, met at a leadership conference that was done by one of the organizations that he's a part of called Innovista, which you can talk a little bit more about that, Anatoly. What exactly role you have there. And then also we talked a lot more at the Global Leadership Summit, which is just another conference here that we've both attended together. So yeah, how can people contact you online if they want to?
If the people would like to contact, they can go to our Facebook page. We're talking about Ukraine. The problem is that the name of the page is in Cyrillic, not in Latin. So you have to find out Cyrillic name Innovista. It will be Facebook. The same on Instagram, the same on Telegram, if you know this operator. Also, if someone is interested to contact me directly, they can find me on Facebook, Anatoliy Sapsay. I can actually give in chat proper name, how to spell.
Yes, please. And that'll be good. And I'll put all of that in the links below. And one of the things that I'm hoping for, this podcast is to make you a little bit even more busy, because Anatoly is helping our church right now restructure our leadership. And it has been such a blessing for our church. And so I want to pass you guys on basically as another resource that our viewers can have, because I think leadership is one of the key things that we need to work on as a church right now in Ukraine, as missionaries, etc., because that's leading right now and also passing on the vision to the next generation, etc. So it's so important. So yeah.
Thank you for this advertisement.
Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord.
Amen.
So what would be your one phrase, one sentence definition of what is a good leader?
Yeah, if it would be one sentence, it would be, this is the leader which someone wants to follow. Very short.
Yeah. A leader is someone.
Yeah, if you want me to unpack a little bit, just that character and integrity are there, and passion for what he's doing, what he's leading, ministry or church. He loves what he's doing. If you have such a leader, always will be people who would like to follow him.
Good. Yeah, I think that sounds kind of like Maxwell.
Maybe I cannot remember.
Yeah.
I definitely heard this not from Maxwell, but
yeah. Well, Maxwell and all the other big thinkers, they kind of echo each other and say it in their own way. So yeah, but that's where I heard it first, I think. A couple of years ago, John Maxwell was one of the speakers at the GLS, Global Leadership Summit. And after hearing his talk, I was like, okay, I really want to get into this. So I read his book, The 21 Laws of Leadership. I read it twice, I think. And just fell in love with the book. I'm a systematic type of guy. I love to have principles and steps and everything. So that really helped me to see some of the ways that I'm lacking in leadership. And some things that he puts things into three categories in the book. The things that you're strong in that you need to work on, things that you're weak in that you need to work on, and then things that you're so weak in that you need to delegate as a leader. So, and then it's 21 different things, and you kind of rate yourself on the different things, and then you give suggestions and stuff like that. So, But that was one of the things that he said, is that if people aren't following you, then you're not a leader. But if people are following you, then you already are a leader, whether you have a position or a title or not. It doesn't matter. So, yeah.
It is good when someone who people are following, he has an official position of the leader, because very often you have someone in position, but people rather to go for question than for instructions to someone else. This is not so good.
Yeah, that's true. I remember a church that was planted recently. I was talking to one of the members of the church not too long ago, and it's a very interesting church plant where the pastor is a really young guy, but around him are other former pastors, leaders, even seminary professors, and they're maybe twice his age. And my temptation would be, if I was going to that church, would be to follow those, I call them almost titans of the faith, because I know some of these people, instead of looking to the pastor to be my pastor.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, what, if you were counseling that pastor in particular, what would you, what advice would you give to him?
Wow. Yeah. Of course, it will depend on characters and wisdom of those people around this particular leader. Because if they are titans, they understand that they need to give as much support to this particular guy leader as possible. I would probably encourage everyone to clarify for themselves who they are in the team and who this leader is. So, like clarity. One of the biggest problem in leadership, it's a lack of clarity in different dimensions of leadership we are practicing. Is it leading a team or functioning as a team? Like if we are one team, then is the best thing is to clarify what is my role in this team. If I'm super experienced person I'm a titan with such a list or regalias of achievements, but I want to help younger one to grow, then I need to put myself in some in particular situation, in particular position, and make it clear for everyone that I'm not here the number one and number two and number three, but number one is this one. So let's listen to him, or let's ask him what he thinks about this. We will give our piece of advice, but he is the one who is leading the team. So this would be my suggestion to discuss within the team. But team needs to agree and to talk through these things.
Definitely, that clarity is so important, I think, in any relationship. And sometimes, depending on the amount of stress and tension and decisions that have to be made and all that kind of stuff, especially in a leadership situation, it varies on how much clarity is required, I think. But especially if you're leading a church and there's this kind of imbalance or something like that in experience and everything, we have a saying in English that is good fences make good neighbors. And there's like different versions of that. But the idea is, that clarity, it leads to more productive, more friendly relationships. And one example that some of my friends like to use is one of the reasons why people are so nice in like Texas or like Georgia or something is that because everybody has a gun. So everybody respects everyone, and the boundary, so. Yeah, so anyway, maybe that's a tangent for another time, but anyway. Just a reminder to anybody that's watching, if you like what we're doing, if you like the podcast and everything, please do like this video, subscribe, hit the notification bell like all the other YouTubers are bugging you to do right now. I know maybe it's annoying, but it really does help the channel. So, but we'll keep on talking about leadership. One of the things that I want to do with this particular podcast episode is give American missionaries, and maybe people back home too, Canadian or English or anybody else in the English-speaking world that would want to come and either plant a church or serve in Eastern and Central Europe. But we're talking about the context of Ukraine, obviously, is what are some unique leadership challenges here so that we can understand better?
I think for everyone who is coming here, needs to be very clear about history and heritage that this country has or carry. Because Soviet style of leadership was kind of not very much like reflecting biblical values. So strong leadership here, or effective leadership, very much considers the authoritarian approach style, if you wish. So, and sometimes in churches it's very much the case, and people sometimes consider that strong leader, it's a leader who knows how to hit the table very well. As stronger you hit the table with your hand, as better leader you are. Very sometimes it's a historically and culturally this
a factor.
This concept. So please, servant leadership, it's not model which we very much aware of. I'm talking about Ukraine and Ukrainian mentality. For Americans or for foreigners, I would say, make sure you understand local context where you are, like people, culture, language.
Like even depending on the city, right?
Yeah, of course. In different part of Ukraine, it will be a little bit different. So make sure you completely understand where you are, what the values, what the fears, what people like, what don't.
But what's a practical step? Like what can they do to do that? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That can be especially hard for somebody that hasn't learned the language yet.
Yeah, like probably make sure, like best way, read in advance before you come. Make sure you read a lot of historical information. Make sure you talk to the missionaries who've been here before. When you're here, put a lot of maximum efforts to learn language as soon as you can, because it opened the door for you. And to build good relationship with locals. I mean, build good friendship with some families. Go visit them. People love to have guests here, so make sure you visit them and listen. Ask a lot of questions about different details. Whatever you don't understand, ask. What does it mean? Why you do that or you do that? Because this will give you excellent understanding what is going on here, and it will unlock people's heart for you, because this is exactly what the missionary wants to achieve, to get people's heart, to understand them, to help them to understand the gospel. So this is what I would say, another kind of piece of advice.
Yeah, that's some great ideas. I remember when I was I didn't speak the language very well. I was living in a part of the city called Levendivka, which is I don't know what to compare it to. It's the bad part of town, and I had a neighbor who was this grandma. She'd help me figure out how to pay my bills. She'd help me figure out how to work the ATM and stuff like that, and just like the nicest person. And to this day, I haven't lived in that part of town in maybe 6 years, but if I happen to be over there, I can call and say, hey, can I come up in 5 minutes? And she is always ready to have a cup of tea, and that's something that's that American culture we're definitely not used to, and maybe not used to asking, is basically inviting yourself over. That at least in my experience, the older generation here is so open to do, and it's this huge doorway into the culture that even when I didn't understand the language very well, she was trying to fellowship with me. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We a little bit like someone said, Ukraine is halfway between West and East.
West and East, yeah.
We don't have such a clear boundaries in relationship, in arrangements, in business as on West, but we definitely not as like totally like without any boundaries as it's on East. So it's from the point of relationship, people are open, yeah, very much to have you whatever time. Yeah, Western culture is influencing us, so it's changing, but not everywhere, not all the time.
Yeah. I remember I used to serve with the Pratt family here in Lviv, and I remember there would be times when somebody would like be on a train to Lviv and call them and say, "Hey, can I stay with you guys for a few days?" And for an American, that is a challenge, but to them it was just normal, and that was not 6 years ago, 7 years ago. So that's still a part of the culture, I think. So yeah, it's a lot more. It's different. It's definitely different.
Yeah.
And I think the more Americans are able to that are aware and are able to deal with it in the proper way, I think the more successful they'll be as missionaries.
One more thing about to be aware of. It's a Ukrainian culture is totally different. So yeah, for this to get, like, if you will get closer to people, you will better will understand cultural differences. Because, for example, from leadership point of view, Ukrainians are very open to talk to you, to meet, to host you, but they will rarely will tell you what they think, what they really think. It brings a lot of problem from the leadership point of view if you're going to lead the church or to lead the team, because people will think one thing but talk to you different, or not will talk to you. So this is what I call that our culture is totally contradict biblical truth. This is exactly the point when culture totally contradict Bible, but this is a reality. And mission.
Nope, it looks like we're having some problems with connection here. Give me a second. I'm going to see if we can.
Within the church and within the ministry, heavily. So honest talk, it's not common thing here.
Okay. It's interesting that you would say that. I do think of Ukrainians as generally being more straightforward when you do know the person. Like, for instance, I've taken a couple furloughs in America. Usually when I come back, in America, we don't walk as much. We're driving in cars. If you're traveling a lot, trying to see different churches, so you're eating junk food, McDonald's, that kind of thing. And so when you come back, you've gained a couple kilos. That's a normal American thing to do, is to come back with some extra weight, And one of the first things that my friends often tell me here is, "Oh, David, you gained some weight." In an American context, that is extremely offensive.
Wow.
You never say that to a person. But here, it's like just stating a fact. "Oh, you changed your shirt. Oh, you gained some weight," or something. I don't know. Maybe I still don't understand it.
Okay.
So balance these two things for me, because Americans think of Ukrainians as this kind of like harsher culture in a way, where sometimes they say too much of what they think.
Okay, I probably understand what you're talking. It's it's bringing brilliant. It's an American talking with Ukrainian, and they see their own perspective, because when I said that they will not share, it's not so much about, you know, general observational thing, but it's about their inner thinking, or, for example, relationship offensive thing about like what you've done, what you like. Um,
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
yeah,
sense. I see where you're going.
I'm struggling to bring it together because I remember I had one thing with American missionary, and for him it was offensive. For me, totally normal. But when he opened it to me, I felt myself very much embarrassed
Mm-hmm.
because it was similar with this example with overweight,
Mm-hmm.
because I came to visit one missionary, American, and I started to notice some things that I would change
Mm-hmm.
because to my logic it's more obvious or more logical would be to
Mm-hmm.
do this or that, to put things there or there. It will be more ergonomical for your use.
Mm-hmm.
But later he'd call me, you know, but what you was doing, you was just fixing me all the time, fixing
Mm-hmm.
my life. So I was bringing my apologies.
Mm-hmm.
When I said that Ukraine is not open, like, for example, when if you hurt them, or they will never tell you, they will never come to you and say your words or your, for example, if Ukrainians, like generally, of course, there are always exceptions, but generally, for example, if something you will tell and it will hurt me, I usually will keep my mouth shut, though Bible is encouraging us to develop this
Yeah.
habit. Come to a brother and talk to him. Like, make sure your heart is plain with him. And
Mm.
and this is the biggest problem because main concern within a teams, if you're talking from the leadership point of view, when we affecting each other all the time, we're influencing each other, not always in the best possible way, but rarely you will find team which has this good habit, open talk, bringing to the table all questions, all concerns, all fancies, and talk through this.
Mm.
So this is
That
what I meant.
this in particular, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. This in particular has been a huge struggle for me. Not just because I'm an American, but because of my family. When I was a kid and somebody offended someone else, we talked about it right there, and we could talk about it for an hour or two or three, but we were going to finish that conversation. And it was usually same day, if not the same few minutes. And so coming into a Ukrainian context where some of my new relatives here, my in-laws, they had a fight about uh, some inheritance thing, and they literally did not talk about it for 10 years. you know or in other relationships of mine. And I'm not trying to be like super negative about the culture, or I'm just sharing my experience that sometimes when I've had a conversation with someone and I've accidentally offended somebody, or if we had a conflict, and then I'll message a little later and say, hey, can we sit down again and talk about this? I want to work through this, and I don't get a response.
Mm-hmm.
Or I get a response, I don't know, and it's like rescheduled and then rescheduled again and then rescheduled again. Like, how can we cope with this better? I don't know. It's still something I haven't figured out. Do you have anything for me? Because this one's hard.
Yeah, I understand. It you pushing Ukrainians out of their comfort zone very much, and this is not correct, biblical. It's not godly comfort zone totally. So I would encourage, because this is where we desperately, as Ukrainians, need change to change. This is exactly the area. So I would encourage everyone who has this understanding that this is not right, push. Just don't stop, don't give up. because we as Ukrainians, we have to learn. This is not right. This is not according to the God's will, not according with the God's word. That this needs to be changed. So don't give up. Push and say. You know, for Ukraine is this phrase like, but God is encouraging, or God is asking us to do this way. So use this, not just we need to talk about this, because Ukrainians will be, no, let's talk about this later. Maybe we can not talk about. We have this phrase like we go through this, or we went through this. So don't come back. Let past will be in past. So nobody talked through this effectively, but let it will be there.
Mm-hmm.
And as you mentioned, 10 years already behind us, but we still remember. It's still painful. It's still hurting. But nobody wants to talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. And it's so if I'm hearing you right, like keep loving, keep pushing, keep fighting, but fight for the relationship, right?
Yes. Don't give up.
That makes sense. So, talking more about leadership, continuing on in a more general sense. One of the things I want to do as a leader is just to get better. I want to be someone that's not just that people want to follow. I want to be someone that's worth following, if that makes sense. So, as a leader, what are some good ways to improve?
My boss, he's a great leader. International director of Innovista International, Jason Lane. I don't know if this is his phrase, maybe someone else, but he said to me, leader is a reader. So I like this phrase, and I totally agree that for anyone, if he wants to grow, make sure you develop yourself. Not only reading, but reading is a great way to grow. One thing.
So when you say reading, do you mean like reading your Facebook feed, you're reading Reddit, reading articles? No.
Make sure you read things about leadership, about effective leadership, about fruitful leadership. Books, podcasts. If you want to watch somebody's talks who are great example, make sure you do this, because this is always bring you to the point when you understand this is I never thought about this, I never knew about this, and this is automatically make your understanding about leadership, about your challenges as a leader in particular situation, much better, because you understand better things better, you understand better people around you, and this what makes you a better leader. So develop yourself. Make sure you visit places where good leaders gather together, because it's the great thing. Also, we have another phrase in Ukraine. Maybe you have similar in America. Tell me who your friend is, and I will tell you who you are.
Yeah, I think we do have something similar. I've been in Ukraine for too long to know exactly which phrase it is, but
yes.
Something like that. Yeah, something like tell me who your friends are, and I'll tell you how far you'll go, or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it is, but something along those lines, same lines.
Yeah. So, so make sure you in places or among people who will encourage you again to grow, to develop, who will pull you to the better level. So this is what I would suggest you if you want to become a leader. And another thing which I would tell you, don't be afraid to make new steps. Don't be afraid, because I think what we are missing, especially in Ukraine, it's courage. A lot of leaders, they don't have courage, and this is marvelous in English language, what you have encouragement, to give courage to someone who is missing this courage.
We don't think about that, but yeah.
Yeah. When I was reading this, my boss was writing this as this is exactly what leaders are called. Great leaders are called to give courage those that discouraged they don't have it. So try new things, because it's another thing where you will grow dramatically when you will get experience of things which you never tried before, or this new projects, new style, new approach, especially now when we have coronavirus challenges around. Like, this is unique opportunity to try something that you never done before. It brings golden experience that you never had before.
Yeah, that's one of the things that when I really started to get into leadership that I noticed that was lacking in my part was being willing to take risks and try something new. But that is so important, isn't it, to for the leader to be the one to push the boundary ahead, and then to encourage others, to give that courage to others. Yeah. So, but if you're not the one as a leader being courageous, then the courage that you give to others, I think, will be kind of empty.
Yeah, because it's I'm thinking aloud with you.
Yeah.
Because I think fear, it's something which we first experienced in Eden. It's still chasing us all the time. We're much more people around us, much more they have fear rather than courage or boldness. People are afraid. We as a people are afraid of many things. I would say many things. And this is when leaders are helping people to break through this, starting new relationship with neighbors, coming to new people, about sharing about gospel, coming just to help them with the needs they have. If you are able to help people with this first steps, great change can happen.
Yeah. So that's how we can grow as individual leaders, right? To be reading, to be seeking, and then to be courageous in passing on courage to others. We have in my opinion, it's the first time I've been on a church council that's basically like the head of the church is the church council. It's a very interesting situation for me. So we have this team, this very small team, that is leading almost like a board of directors in a company. What would be the best ways for a team like that, a small team, to grow together in leadership? Because every person on this team is also leading others, but that doesn't mean those others will be a part of our meetings or a part of our. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So,
for any team to be effective or successful, to achieve, because this is a purpose for a team to get together to achieve something, whatever they put them in front of them, it's to spend some time together, to make sure they are together for clarifying and making sure you're clear on what we are doing, how we are doing, and why we are doing this. Or to be what we're doing, why we're doing, and how we're going to do that. Whatever we are doing. It means purpose, roles, responsibilities, processes, relationships, everything as a bunch. And if you make sure that if you did put some investment of your time, resources, money into these 4 steps, you will lead with some impact. You will have good results of whatever you are doing.
But how can we continue to build these relationships during quarantine?
Yeah,
that's hard.
Yeah, quarantine is challenge because Zoom is only rescue, but still Zoom is a excellent opportunity because quarantine brings us what positives. We have more time to this particular thing as a team meeting than we had before because usually we are on run, so usually we have like 1 or 2 hours and this is it. On my observation, some people still have a lot of activities happening, but majority they have less activity in their life during quarantine than before. Less. It means if you really want this, you can invest more time into seeing each other, having instead of one Zoom, like 1 or 2 hours per week, you have two Zooms and make sure you discuss about, okay, what next steps? When quarantine is over, like in 3, 5 weeks, 7 weeks, it will be over. So what we will do, because then everyone will begin running over on circle. We call it as a squirrel in this like circle. Everyone will be and we will tell us in 7 weeks, I don't have time for meeting. So this is make sure you use this time effectively. Meet together, discuss through things which you didn't have time before to discuss. Bring clarity, and I assure you that for your team health, it will be good.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I've really appreciated with our sessions with you over the past several weeks is that you've given us a framework and some guidance on how to use this time effectively. We started before the quarantine, but I mean, if we hadn't have started and if we weren't continuing to go through this, I think we would have gotten stranded in this time because really, like for some of us, there are some of us that are super busy during quarantine. There are others that are like kind of, you know, twiddling their thumbs, and finding that time or being intentional with that time has been so advantageous for us. So let's see, how else can I pick your brain?
Yeah, I think this is exactly the best part or most important part what Innovista, what we as a worker of Innovista are doing for the teams. Because, you know, we are not opening new things. You can read about all those things in books, on podcasts, listen on speakers. But what is missing that everyone can get this information, that this is a missing part of our team. Okay, but the problem is, okay, how to bring these unique things into my team and put it into practice. And we are using coaching approach, asking a lot of questions for people, for teams to see their situation and for themselves to question, okay, what we can change about this for better. So this is, this is what I consider as a best part of our work. We try to create platform when everyone can invest, can bring some input and discuss it in good hot discussion. I mean, I like hot discussions because this is brings honesty and show passion and commitment.
Yeah, if we're not passionate about what we're talking about, maybe we shouldn't be leaders. You know? Like, yeah, that's very important. That's very important. And that's one of the things that I think that you've really helped us to do is to have those passionate, hot discussions, but with having peace between one another. Because before this process, we would take things personally.
Okay.
You know, so, and that's, we kind of needed somebody on the outside to tell us, no, it's okay. You have ideas that will knock against each other, that will have a conflict of ideas, but it doesn't have to be a conflict of people.
Yeah.
So
of course a lot will help if you will agree that let's separate our personality from our ideas and not to mix those two, because I can bring an idea, any idea, and it will be It can be good, it can be not so good. And that's all right if you will throw my idea out. That's totally okay. So if you agree this within a team, that's all. That's perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that is. I can tell you that's a struggle for me when I have my ideas thrown out. I feel like that's kind of one of my roles in a team, if that makes sense, to come up with new things. And I remember like times when I would like if I thought my ideas were not being taken seriously, I would disengage. I'd still try to listen with one ear, but I'd be playing on my phone or checking Facebook messages or something like that, which is something I needed to repent from. Uh, uh, but uh, but yeah, having that sense where, well, it takes humility, to say
Yeah.
that I'm still a part of the team, and then for them to recognize that I'm still a part of the team. But I'm not going to have every idea that everybody's going to automatically accept or think is the best thing ever. So yeah, yeah.
I understand.
Aside from Jesus in the Bible, who's your favorite leader?
Good question. You know, uh, I would say I like leadership style of my boss, if I can say. Or should I
Um,
bring a biblical example?
yeah, biblical example. Yeah.
Biblical. Uh, I like David, and when he was trying to be always open with his people. I like that in leadership when you're open, because one of the problem with leaders, they are not open with their people. So I like David. Mm, yeah.
That's an interesting one. Openness that I actually talked to. I think it was two interviews when I talked with 2 interviews ago. I talked with Rylan Woodbury Jones, and he actually has a podcast now. He started about a week before I did. I had no idea until I saw that we were both posting episodes online. And his podcast is specifically directed towards leadership. He wants to talk about leadership, and one of the things that he said was that when you're conveying a message, that you don't want to bleed on people, is what he said, is to be careful with how open you are, not to be too open. And I think he was specifically talking in the context of preaching, like
Mm,
preaching in the church. But I I tend to challenge that idea. Like I think that as a whole, people are more closed than they need to be,
yeah, definitely.
than too open, at least in the context where I am. What do you think?
I think it's again coming back to the culture of Ukraine, which I mentioned in the beginning. Uh, Ukrainian cultural concept of leadership. It's superstar who never makes mistake, who is totally like strong and never vulnerable, never cry or anything like this garbage, which is which is has nothing to do with the Bible. And one of the, to my, in my experience, one of the greatest example of openness to of the leader is to show his vulnerability, to show his that he can make mistake and he is making mistake, and he easily confess his mistakes. He easily asks for forgiveness, because again, leaders never make mistake and never ask for forgiveness, because from this perspective he's a weak leader, he's not strong leader, which is totally opposite to what the Bible is saying about these things. But this is a culture. So openness, it's a big thing. And for me, when you express this openness up to the point that you show your vulnerability, that's, to me, it's a great sign that you're a great leader.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And that's another thing that I also appreciate about David. You know, that he's not just sharing with others, you know, in the moment. He is literally, you know, crying and writing these psalms and then passing them on to the how do you say that, the choir director, dirigente Horo, the choir director, you know, in Jerusalem. And he's saying, sing this in the temple, you know, about my struggles, you know, like, so yeah, and I don't think he was just like maybe a blogger or something, like proclaim, you know, what kind of day I have because it's on my Instagram feed, or no, he wasn't being a celebrity. He's saying, like, be honest with God and be honest with one another.
Yeah.
And I think that raw honesty of David is something that God desires from us, and, you know, in our relationship with him and with others. So
yeah, great way to express it. Be honest with God and be honest with people. That's a great way to express it.
So you were talking about your boss as kind of another leadership hero of yours. Could you tell us a little bit more about him and some things that you've learned from him in the process of working there in Innovista?
I learned about him a great deal of to have this to express grace towards people with whom you're working. This is a great example. For example, yeah, let my confession, my sin, bringing up when we had some agreements, I and some deadlines, and I didn't make it. And I was expecting, again, cultural expectation of boss, like making but strong and effective, like to bring the results.
Yeah, it's gonna make you sorry for it, right?
Yeah, to make sure that I understand my mistake. And how gracious he was in understanding my mistakes, my shortfallings, and still trusting, still making sure your people you're working with, they understand that you love them, doesn't matter. Yeah, he understands my mistakes, but still he trusts and loves me, cares for me. That's unique thing which I learned from him. What does it mean to be gracious leader? Full of compassion. And when you see example of Jesus, you see exactly this thing.
Oh yeah.
You know, he was clear about mistakes of his disciples. Oh, there's nobody else. But you never see this rude approach, you know, or harsh approach to his disciples.
Yeah. That's one of the things I appreciate about one of the leaders that's particularly God's using in my life right now. Alexander Savage, the head, my faculty dean at UBTS, which UBTS, it's Ukrainian Baptist Theological Seminary for anybody that's watching. And one of the things I like to talk about with the other students in my group is that we literally forget that he has other student groups, because he seems so almost fatherly when we're together in Zoom or in the classroom or something, that like we feel so close to him and that he really loves us, you know. And I have disagreements with him. We've had, you know, back and forth, like things that I don't agree with that he's done, or that he doesn't agree with that I've done, or, you know, things like that. So it's not that everything's, you know, peaches and roses and candy all the time. No. But at the same time, like, I know he's praying for me, you know, and I can call him and I can say, hey, today was a bad day. Can we just pray for 5 minutes? Is that okay? Like, and he's there. So that's the kind of leader I want to be, for sure. So, yeah. Okay. But yeah, so you said learning grace from him, right? Is there anything else that you want to add to that list of things that you learned from him?
Perseverance, it's another thing which
Mm.
he is always like demonstrating. And you have this wonderful word, resilience,
Mm.
in English,
Yeah.
because his personal situation, his life is not so good. His wife has severe sickness, like, and she's not getting better, but getting
Mm.
opposite. It's a long fight in their life. They are fighting this sickness already many years, and I see him still, like full of passion for the ministry, for his team, for leaders whom he wants to serve. And so resilience, perseverance, graciousness,
Mm-hmm.
these are things.
What? How do we stay resilient? Because one of the things, I don't know how much into the weeds to go with this story, but one thing that impacted me was a story of a pastor that I heard up in northwestern Ukraine that had to step down, and he's not more than a couple years older than I am.
I
I
know
think
him.
you know who, yeah, you know who I'm talking about. So he had to step down because of some medical problems he had, or just being burnt out or something. Because he was going so hard and trying to be so resilient for years. I think he started pastoring when he was like 21 or something like that.
I think a little bit before that.
Yeah, even yeah. So started with when he was when he was young, hit the ground running, and just he accomplished so much.
Yeah.
And people coming from his ministry have affected me and been a blessing to me. So I have reaped the fruits of his labors personally.
Mhm.
But uh, I see his ministry almost as cut short. So how do we stay resilient and not have that happen to us? Because I kind of think of that as a false resilience, if that makes sense. Not to offend him. That's one of the reasons why I'm,
Yeah,
not
I
saying his
understand.
name. But I don't want that to happen to me. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, you're asking hard question, my brother. And I'm afraid there is no simple answer to those questions because all those wonderful speakers you're mentioning, you're reading, they also fighting those questions. I think it's a lot about what is happening in you, who you are. One thing. Another thing is a balance. I think about those pastor you mentioned. This was the problem point when he was probably like not keeping very well balanced because yeah, his health was not doing very well already a few years ago and he didn't pay attention much. So if something goes not according to the plan, you have to pay attention to that as a leader. Yeah, you're asking hard question, brother.
that's my job. That's because I mean, where else are we going to talk about these things? And people need to hear at least the best answer we can give, or just say that it's also okay to say I don't know. I think as a leader, so.
It's another thing. Pay attention when things go wrong with ministry, with your health, and make sure you have a good rest. Like make sure you refresh well, because one of the biggest reasons why leaders are burning out, they never give themselves permission to get good rest. It's one of the main thing which brings leaders, great leaders, to the point of burning out.
Mm-hmm.
They never properly get rest, recover. And this is what happened with this particular pastor. He never paid attention, well attention to his own condition.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, God gave us the Sabbath for a reason.
Yeah, no, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I can tell you at this particular moment.
Yeah, I
Very quickly.
understand. So before we go, do you have any books that you can recommend for our viewers, or any other resources? I also want to link your, like I said, your Y'all's organization in the description below, so that if anybody wants to contact you and get some leadership coaching, they can. But also,
Yeah.
leaders or readers, like you said. What would you like us to read?
Mm. I like very much style of Patrick Lencioni.
Oh yeah, that's good stuff.
I love his style, and I love principles that he brings very much. So Patrick Lencioni, Five Dysfunction or CEO, like I love those things. I like Maxwell. I like Jim Collins. Jim Collins, yeah. The main purpose was not for the ministry, but as a leader of the ministry, you can get from those books a lot of good. I like for I don't know if English world knows this author Johannes Reimer.
I never heard of him until I came to Ukraine. So
He's
how do you spell his name with Latin letters? Can you give me letter by letter?
yes, because I have his name here in translated book.
Mm-hmm.
I believe
Is he Canadian, American, German?
he's German.
German. Okay.
In Germany, actually, he's a very much known person.
Mm-hmm. I thought he was German.
He's known.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I don't have his name properly. I can try
Mm-hmm.
to write in chat his name.
Okay. I know he's very popular here. Like when I started taking classes at the seminary here, every once in a while I'd hear his name come up, and like, well, Reimer, however you say it in English, he says this or he has this opinion. I'm like, I have no idea who they're talking about. And then I remember one moment in particular that kind of solidified me as to who this person was when a teacher made a joke about him, that it was something along the lines of, well, we're not going to just take him as the gospel truth or something like that. And everybody laughed because I think there's a stereotype of him being this huge authority on so many things. So apparently, if you like his books too, then he is.
I can explain a little bit. He is a great thinker. He is ethnically German, but he was born in former Soviet Union, in Kazakhstan. He grew up in Kazakhstan. So he part of his mentality is Soviet mentality. So he is, as no one else, understand the culture of church leadership, theological approach of former Soviet era, which influenced modern situation. That when he was a young person, he immigrated to Germany on the end of 80s, beginning of 90s. He immigrated. Then he became theologian, and now he's a great pastor and great influential thinker in Europe, in Germany. He's quite famous and known person in Germany among thinkers. He's PhD. He wrote a paper on PhD.
Is he part of the? I'm doing a Google search. Is he part of the World Evangelical Alliance? Is that him?
I wouldn't be surprised if he is. I don't know for sure.
Mm-hmm. Studied theology in Germany, Belgium, the USA, South Africa.
You found him.
Possibly. Bible colleges and universities. This sounds like him in St. Petersburg, Russia, Lithuania. Yeah. Okay. So I'll put a link to him in the description.
Yeah. What I like is very sharp, as Germans always are, critical thinking. It's another challenge which I missed to add to the cultural baggage which Americans or Canadians should keep in mind when they are coming here. Lack of critical thinking here among Christians, among non-Christians, just as a culture. we are not tend to critically assess of what we are doing, why we are doing. It's concerning ministry or businesses. So,
Could
and
that be
he's
because it was kind of dangerous in the
yeah,
60s and 70s?
yeah, it's because of the Soviet style. It was always a push that someone else will think for you. You don't have to bother yourself with such a heavy things as a thinking. So someone else will do it for you. And it's influenced country politically, economically, because always someone else pay attention to some things. So don't be bothered. So this the general concept in Eastern Europe, especially former Soviet Union country, someone else will pay attention to that, not you. Which again, not very biblical, because Jesus always encouraging us, hey, be soberly assess, like critically.
Yeah, that
Watch
word,
out.
even sober, isn't just I think connected to alcohol or drugs or something, but
Yeah,
to
watch
this
out. Like,
sharp thinking. Yeah.
yeah, all the time. And God is always wanted. Think carefully. Think twice before you want to do whatever you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Think critically. Will you be able to do that or that? That's not the part of the culture of this in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Very often.
Mm-hmm.
And he is, Reimer, excellent critical thinker. He pushes you very well in
So,
this
what are some
direction.
things you've learned from him?
Generally, I like his books because he is pushing, like, for example, this little series of books, and he pushes churches in Ukraine, because he works heavily involved in Ukraine and in Russia. And he critically assess why you do what you do, why you do this ministry or that approach exactly the way you are doing this, just because it was done 20, 30, 40 years ago, it doesn't work anymore. So what's the point to keep it? And another question he raised, it's about uh, bringing us back to the notion of local church. And I have to say I totally agree with him that this is a big thing with modern culture changes. Local church kind of little evaporates, but
Mm-hmm.
this is, and he put the question, is it best approach to the
Mm-hmm.
ministry or to the spreading of the church?
Mm-hmm. Like this model in particular, right?
Yeah, because you always care only for that which is close to you, which is warm, near you.
Mm-hmm.
Something which is far,
Mm-hmm.
you don't pay much attention.
Mm-hmm.
So
Interesting.
yeah, so he's someone who is shouting about this again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. That'd be interesting. I'll do some searches and see if I can find some of his books in English if there are there, because particularly this channel is geared towards that. But also, like, if there are some good ones in Ukrainian or Russian that you want to send me the titles of, like in particular his works, that I can put those in the description below as well, because I know there are a lot of people that watch that are locals from different either Soviet bloc or satellite states, or those countries that also watch our channel, so they'll be able to read those. So that'll be good. Yeah. As we're coming to a close, how can I pray for you, man? I'd like to pray for all of my guests, as we finish up the podcast.
Oh, please pray for because of coronavirus and economical crisis, we definitely will have some consequences, negative consequences in our ministry, Innovista ministry. So please pray for us that we would be able to go through this smoothly without shocking kind of effects. We don't know yet the depths of our kind of gap we will have to go through, but we definitely know exactly that it will be there.
Mm-hmm.
So
if somebody wanted to support your ministry, how could they do that? Do you have a link or something you can send me?
Yeah, like they can. The best way to do this for foreigners is through Oxford office.
Mm.
Oxford office has on their website innovista.org in English, in Latin. There will be links if you want to support, and there you can write notification that for Ukrainian team or for Ukraine,
Mm-hmm.
if someone would particularly wants to support our ministry. That's the easiest way for foreigners to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else you want us to pray for?
No, I think that's particular one thing we would really appreciate if you would pray for us.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I know that's a big thing for a lot of people right now. A lot of people in America are struggling. A lot for because losing their jobs or having their jobs put on hold or those kind of things. So let's pray. Lord, thank you so much for my brother Anatoliy and for this ministry Innovista and how much they have blessed our church, and they've been a blessing to so many other churches and organizations around Ukraine and elsewhere. I pray that you would be with them, God. Thank you that as it says in Matthew, not a hair of our heads falls to the ground and you don't take notice. There's not a bird that falls to the ground and you don't take notice, Lord. And so of course you'll take care of us with food and clothing and everything. So you provide for what we need, and you're our Father, Lord. So I pray that you would continue to provide for this ministry that's been a blessing to so many people. Help us to all be effective leaders, help them to be effective leaders, Lord, and within the organization, but also in leading other leaders, God. And I pray for also just in general for the things that we talked about, that we could take these things to heart ourselves. I know that I struggle with rest sometimes, and I pray that you would help us all to know how to put those things into practice, God. And thank you, Lord, for their church, their Христа Спасителя. That God bless that church. Continue to fill them with your spirit, fill them with inspiration, with hope, with courage, God, in that church. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks a lot, brother. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah. God bless. See you.
See ya. Bye.